Marketplace podcast. I'm Mandy Detwiler, editor of Pizza Marketplace, and I'm here today with Jim Metevier, CEO of California-based Mountain Mike's Pizza. Jim, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to join me.
Hi, and yeah, my pleasure. So good to talk to you again.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your journey in the food industry and how you came to lead Mountain Mike's. Where you been? Where you
Oh,
going?
wow. Gosh, I'm so old. So yeah, about what year is this? 32, 33 years in the restaurant space. Actually, was going to be a doctor in psychology, and I was in school. Yeah, I know it's crazy, right? And worked in a hospital and with children and adolescents, and it just kind of broke my heart. And I was like, I don't think I can do this the rest of my life. So I said, let me keep going and go back to school and get my MBA. So I went to business school, and when I came out, I was looking for what to do, and I was going to be in the financial sector. I thought for sure, but then I was at a job fair and I saw a box that said PepsiCo Restaurants International. And as a joke, actually, me and a couple buddies threw our resumes in the box. They didn't even have anybody at the job fair table, and got a phone call from them and talked to KFC. And so Kentucky Fried Chicken back in the early 90s. And when I talked to them, I started to get really interested in the concept because I had never worked in fast food or restaurants in my life. If I had, I probably would have ran because it's such a hard job. But you know what? I jumped in with both feet. I started off as an assistant manager in Orlando, Florida, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, it kicked my butt the first 6 months. I'll tell you, working in restaurants is so hard. Which I always find it funny when I talk to prospective franchisees. They come in and I'll tell them the story. People will tell me, "Hey, when I retire, I want to open a restaurant," and I'm just like, "Well, that's the opposite of retiring." Okay, restaurants are 24/7. And but anyway, so I started in the restaurants. I loved it because I loved not only working with guests in the public, but I just love building teams and developing people and helping them to kind of actualize their dreams, whatever that might be. And so I worked in the restaurants for a few years, and I take over the worst restaurant in the market, and then we'd get it up to a training store, and then the my area coach would be like, "Hey, come take this new restaurant over," which was the worst restaurant in the market then. And so you keep fixing it and moving it on, and so that was fun for a few years. But then eventually I got promoted into a regional office, and I worked in finance for KFC. And then jumped up to Louisville, Kentucky, where you live. Worked out of the tech center, the White House there at the
Yep.
Kentucky Fried Chicken headquarters, the RSC. And I worked in finance, I worked in marketing. And then eventually I got the opportunity to jump into the development side of the business for all of Yum Brands. And so I worked as a market planner back down in the Southeast. And so I did basically development strategy for a little while. And I worked at Yum for 10 years doing a variety of different things, testing new concepts like Taco Bell, KFC, KFC A&W, Pizza Hut, Wing Street. So I was the project leader, put all those together, a breakfast for KFC. Um, and then eventually got asked to go back to KFC on the East Coast, and I ran 1,000 restaurants on the East Coast from Savannah, Georgia to Maine. And one of the things I loved about that was I got to work very closely with franchisees. I had about 200 franchise organizations, and I also had about and which made up about 900 restaurants. And what I loved about that is every time I met a franchisee, I would always ask, "Tell me your story," and they would always be telling me about how it was the second or third generation. Their father or their mother was a franchisee, and they met the colonel or whatever it was, and they had such a passion for the brand, and they had a passion for a legacy that they were creating that they were going to pass on to the next generation. And I loved being a part of that. I loved being able to help them realize their dreams and really just move that forward. And then KFC eventually, after that, they asked me to come back and be the chief operating officer for KFC US. So at that time, we had 5,000 restaurants. I had over 630 franchise organizations. Did that for a few years. And then I jumped over to the East Coast, and I jumped into a new brand. So I think I was with Yum for almost 25 years. It was a great experience, great people, love that brand. and ran a breakfast lunch concept, very founder led, very locally sourced. I think it was open from 6 to 2 in the afternoon. It was a great concept called Biscuitville. I worked there for a little while, loved it. Then I got a phone call to come out west to a concept I had never heard of, which was Mountain Mike's Pizza, and which was strange because I that was part of my one of my jobs was to know all the competition across all the different industries. I'm like, wow, I've never heard of Mountain Mike's Pizza, and they're like, yeah, it's a Bay Area concept. So I talked to a couple of the owners, and we clicked immediately. These guys were ex Burger King franchisees. They love being a franchisee, and so I was like, hey, we share that in common. Didn't know the brand, flew out here, tried the pizza, and I was like, wow, this is definitely the best pizza I've ever had. So I jumped in with both feet, moved out to the West Coast. Even though I'm an East Coast and Midwest kind of guy, now I'm a West Coast. I guess I'm, a whole national kind of guy. But the concept is fantastic. I've been here 6.5 years now, and we're all about bringing family sports fans and communities together to dine, share, and celebrate around pizza the way it ought to be. And that's really kind of our main differentiator. It starts and it ends with the pizza. We have, dough made fresh daily in the restaurants. Our sauce is made in the restaurants. It takes a day to cure. Um, our toppings are premium toppings. We shred our own cheese, which threw me off in training. I'm like, doesn't it come in a plastic bag? And it's like, no, you shred your own cheese. Our toppings are a mountain of toppings from edge to edge. So it's a premium experience. And the things that we have that a lot of the other pizza brands don't have is dining rooms. And, most of our restaurants are 25, 3,500 square feet. You've got arcades, you've got beer and wine for mom and dad, you've got televisions that are on sports. And, that's another thing that differentiates our sports partnership. So I know I'm rambling a little bit, but that's my
No, you're
journey that gets us to today. That's like 33 years in a 10-minute capsule.
well, Mountain Mike's has expanded significantly in recent years. What strategies have driven this growth?
Yeah. Well, first of all, people love our pizza. That's the number one thing, right? Pizza by itself it's a great category. I think I read this one survey that said if you could eat only one food the rest of your life, what would it be? And I think 91% of the people said pizza. And it's customizable, it's shareable, and so pizza is great. It's been around for a long time. It's going to be around for a long time. And so that's the thing, but we do it in a way that nobody else does it. So our brand really resonates with our guests. We also we do well wherever we go, and that's one of the questions that when I got here, we were in, I think it was 4 states, but the majority of it was California. It was all, we had, I think it was 100 and over 70 restaurants that were in the Northern California area. We had one in Oregon, two in Nevada, and one in Utah. And I actually exited Nevada, so we were really down to just 3 states. And so we really weren't that known. And so that was always the question when you come in. It's like, hey, we want to take this brand to the next level, and we're going to grow it from a regional brand to a national brand. But you got to take those baby steps, right? You want to make sure that wherever you go, you're going to be successful, because if your franchisees aren't successful, there is no brand. And so we started to open up in restaurants that were a little bit, well, I'll call it like an amoeba type growth, right? So we were very close to where we had other restaurants. So we already had that brand awareness. But then we started to take some opportunities where we found franchisees that would share our vision about being engaged in the communities, delivering pizza the way it ought to be, delivering a great team member experience. And so we took a few risks to see how that would play in different markets, and it's done well. And so we went from being really 3 states, really one state, but in 3 states, and then now we have development. Gosh, the last time I checked, I think we have development in 14 states right now. We have restaurants open in California. We've got 5 in Oregon. We've got 4 in Nevada. We have 7 in Utah. We have 4 in Arizona. We have a bunch in Texas now, and we have a whole bunch on deck that are going to open up in the next month. I'm sorry, the next 12
Okay,
months.
12
Yeah.
months. Gotcha. How does Mountain Mike's approach franchising and what qualities do you look for in a potential
Yeah.
franchisee?
Yeah, so that's the most important thing. The success of the brand starts and it ends with the franchisees that you partner with, right? So we look for people with the perfect profile would be someone who's engaged in the business and engaged in the community. They understand what it takes to have hospitality and run a restaurant, right? Build teams, deliver a great guest experience, and then just to kind of do that consistently. And so what we look for, we do have people who haven't had restaurant experience that we've allowed to come into the brand. One of our best openings and great franchisees is actually in Utah, a small town called Hurricane. It's kind of like Louisville. It should be Hurricane, but they pronounce it Hurricane. But he was in insurance, but this guy was so connected in the community and he just loved the community so much that when we partnered with him, he delivered that came through in his Mountain Mike's restaurant. And so everybody in the community couldn't wait until he opened up his restaurant. He's very engaged in a lot of charity, a lot of other community activities. And so he blew the doors off when he opened up his restaurant, and this is in a small town. And he continues to actually continues to grow the sales in that. So every franchisee that has interest or prospective franchisee, they come out here to California. They meet with me personally. They meet with my leadership team, and we really ask a bunch of questions. We like to call it dating, right? So they know what they're going to get into. They understand our vision for our brand and what makes us tick, and then we're trying to understand that on their side and trying to see if there's a perfect match. Because if there is, this is a marriage that's going to be 25 plus years probably. So we want to make sure we take that
Right.
opportunity to really vet things out on both sides. And look, if there's not a match, it's like, hey, let's part ways now. And so we really take a lot of time looking for those attributes in the franchise partners that are going to match with us. And if they do, we're going to move forward.
How does the company approach menu innovation and menu
Yeah.
development? Are there any new items on the horizon that you can talk about?
No, no, I'm just kidding.
No.
Yeah. So it's funny when I got here, uh, we had limited infrastructure and we weren't doing menu innovation. I mean, I think there's a standard menu, and I can't remember the last time they had brought out a new item. And so we put a whole process together of consumer insights and some product development that matched with those consumer insights. And so I think the first big, let's call it a new product, was our heart shaped pizzas. I like to do that. I don't know if that comes through, but we rolled that out. I think it was, I'm going to say 2019 of February, in the month of February, where we just made our pizza into um, the shape of a heart, our pepperoni pizza, and it just really resonated. I mean, it blew the doors off. It became one of the biggest promotions we'd ever done, and so we had to really create the process and the structure around how do you do an LTO and roll that out to all of our restaurants. And so we knocked that out of the park. And then we started to get a bunch of new products in the pipeline that would complement our pizza, because I think over 80% of our sales are pizza, right? And so you're looking for how do you complete the meal? So we did a beverage program, um, which was really more of like 20-ounce bottles we brought in. We did 4 packs so you could do some variety with Pepsi. And then we looked at appetizers and we looked at desserts. And so on desserts, we brought out something called miniatures. And on the appetizers, we did mountain fries. And then we have this whole knot line that we came out, I'm going to say about 18 months ago. We had something, we call them knot knots. So they're knot knots. And we have a garlic knot because it's not a knot. It's not your ordinary knot. Um, we had a cinnamon knot. We actually, I'm thinking, when was this? I think it was earlier this year. We did a jalapeno knot, and that really, it was fire. And I'm trying to think what else we've done. Oh, and we just did something called Apple of My Pie Pizza, and we did that for the summer. And we have, gosh, at least 2 years worth of products in the pantry now that we can bring out. And so one of our biggest challenges is how do we look at the calendar and figure out what makes the most sense from a consumer perspective to put on the calendar, because we have so many great things to bring out to our guests. And we have a real rigorous process around that to make sure that, we have 3 screens, right? Is the consumer going to buy it? Are the franchisees going to be able to execute it? And are they going to make more money? And if it ticks the box and gives us a green lights on each of those, then we're going to move forward. And that's the process now. And so, yeah, I'm trying to think the next product that comes out. We actually brought in 3 new flavors of wings this year, or this last month. And something called the spicy Himalayan pizza, which is a chicken tikka masala sauce type pizza with jalapenos and gosh, a variety of fantastic things. It's kind of an Indian inspired pizza, and it's done really, really well. So lots to come in the near future.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing in the pizza industry, and how is Mountain Mike's addressing
Yeah,
those? I mean, we're obviously seeing increase in
yeah,
prices, and that's a big one for you
yeah.
guys.
Yeah, I mean, inflation obviously it's killing everybody out there right now. Tons of headwinds, regardless of what restaurant, but not even restaurants. Every concept you could think of is people are being very particular with their disposable income, and so you've got to be able to provide the guests what they want. And it can be value. Some of it's price value, some's abundant value. And so we're trying to make sure that people understand that we're a premium product. We're worth what you pay, but we also have to give them avenues to get in and provide a lower price alternative while still making or supporting our franchisees and their profitability, right? We're not going to say, here's a free pizza, things like that, right? So we're looking at ways to help build profit while also continuing to drive our top line sales. That's the biggest thing. And then on, some of the trickle down from that is you got supply chain pressure, the costs on that. We've actually done a really good job. We have some great partners that we leverage. Over the last 3 years, we've really done a great job of keeping the product inflation down. The other thing that we deal with, especially on the California side, and it's coming to the rest of the country, I'm sure, is the labor cost and some of the government regulations, like the FAST Act
Yeah.
and all the fun things that we've had to navigate. And we just over communicate with our franchisees and help them push forward through that type of stuff. And but it's every day. There's always excuse me. There's always something out there, right? And you just got to be looking around the corner and being prepared to help you know hit those challenges head on.
What makes a great customer experience at Mountain Mike's? How important are your customers? Obviously, they're going to be
Yeah.
tops.
There's a variety of experiences, right? So you think about we have different occasions. So you've got home meal replacement, whether that's pickup or delivery. And on delivery, you have first in-house delivery, third-party delivery. For us, then we have dine-in, right? And that's a whole nother occasion that, like I said, most pizza places don't have. And then in the dine-in occasion, you have group occasions, you've got lunch occasions, and so we have strategies against every single one of those and expectations. And a great experience is not just giving people what they expect, but it's how do you go above that, right? And so, like on the delivery side, one of the things that we really encourage our franchisees to do, and some of the best ones do it every time, is like on a delivery experience, they'll call the guests back afterwards, like an hour later, and just say, hey, how was your pizza? How many pizza places do that? It's usually like, hey, it's at the door. Let's go focus on the next thing. In the dining room,
Right.
and how do you elevate a fast casual occasion into more of a full service occasion and really coming and connecting with that guest in a very authentic way, right? Not that you're checking a box and you just come by and you table touch and you're like, okay, I did that. I can get in the back of the restaurant. It's like, no, 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 no. Let's ask the guests some questions. Where do you live? What's going on? I mean, if there's a little league team, hey, tell us, did you win? How do you really authentically connect with those consumers? And I think when you do that, that sets you apart. And so we try to encourage that, teach that, so it becomes second nature for
What is your vision for Mountain Mike's in the next, let's say, 5 or 10 years? Where do you want to see the
everyone. We were going
company
to take over
go?
the world. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah,
Of
no,
course.
look, that's one thing I tell franchisees all the time. It's like, we're not about a number. We're about one number. I'm about 100% successful franchisees. So every time we open a restaurant, I want it to be successful. If it's not successful, I don't care if I open 400. If I have one or two fail, that's a failure for us. So we're very intentional and thoughtful on how we grow. I ensure that supply chain, anytime I go, further away from California, supply chain's fully set up. What are we doing on a brand awareness perspective? How are we engaging the community? So we're doing a lot of the things that we need to be doing ahead of time to like soften the ground as we continue to grow. And yeah, we're going to go from west to east. You probably just read we signed, I think it's a 10 restaurant development agreement in the state of Florida. We've got one we're about to
Mhm.
sign in Virginia. We've got stuff in Tennessee. We've got Oklahoma, Arkansas, Wisconsin. So we've got a
Great.
whole bunch of states that we're looking to get into, or we are working on right now. And so we'd love to be a national brand. We'll be at 300 restaurants before the end of this year. 5 years from now, um, that number could be pushing, it should be pushing 1,000. But again, we're not tied to any numbers, and we just want to do it in the right way so we build the dynasty long term.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure to talk
Yeah.
to you again, as usual.
Well, it's good seeing you. Thanks for making the time for me too.
Yeah. That'll do it for this episode of the Pizza Marketplace podcast, and we'll catch you next
Bye.
time.